各位观众朋友，早上好，晚上好。造句成阳，以传承与创新启全球教育新
Good
章。
morning, good
欢迎
evening.
大家来
From
到第
local
16
seeds
届
to
哈
global
佛中国
deeds,
教育论坛
innovating
早课
education
成
through
论坛，
continuity.
教育科
Welcome to
技
the
分论
last
坛的分
panel
享。
of the
我是
16th
本届
China
分论坛
Education
主席曹
Symposium.
思颖。
This is the
教育科技
Educational
是时代未
Technology
来
panel.
和时
I
代大
am
浪
the
潮
Deputy Director
，AI、
Tao Sining.
VR、AR 等新兴技术
AI,
为
VR, and
前所
AR
未有
and
的方
other new
式改变教育
technologies
的
are
可能性。
changing our
曾经
possibility
前
of
所未有
education
或
in
几
an
乎不可实
unprecedented
现，
way.
如今却可以借助技
Previously,
术日行
we
千里。因为科
close
技使
ourselves
教育不
down
再
if
局
we
限
have
于
no
教学时
access
间
to
的
the
规范，
external world.
而是
But
在
now
虚
we
拟
have
现实
access
的
to
建构下
everything
同
on the
步影响
internet.
世界的大
It has
流。
opened up a new
下
door
面
for
让我们
us
欢
to
迎教育科
communicate
技
with the
分论坛
world.
上
Now
1、2和
let's
3
welcome the
杨超
co-hosts
和嘉
of
宾们
the
为大家带来分享。
Educational Technology Symposium, and they will
Thank you so
bring
much,
our guests
Winnie.
on board.
Good evening, everyone, and good morning. Evening, good afternoon, good morning for everyone from across the globe. Um, Welcome to the 2025 Harvard Education Forums, especially for the Education Technology panel. I'm so excited to joining you all virtually from all around the world as we embark on an exploration of the theme of how can education technology truly becomes a force that reshapes learning. So to begin, I'll start by introducing myself and our other panel director. My name is Vivian. You can call me Shu or Vivian. I'm currently a student at Harvard Graduate School of Education, pursuing a master in education technology innovation at Harvard. And I'm very passionate about exploring humans' potential, conducting different AI, VR, XR technologies to deliver individualized learning that can reach out everyone's across the globe. Very exciting to
Hello,
hear.
hello everyone. I'm Charles, the panel directors of Education Technology Symposium. I'm also candidates for Masters in Education Technology at University College London. My passion lies in the areas of smart education and science education communications, where I explore the age technologies can be integrated to enhance the learning experience.
Great. Thank you so much. So, just let's agree background
Uh,
for the education technology panel.
Yeah, the significance of education technologies goes far beyond being just a tool. It's a driving force that reshapes the instinct for learning and refines the human education experience. For a long time, the impossible triggers has hindered education development. High quality teaching is difficult to replicate on a large scale. Mass education struggles to complement personalization, and the personalized education is restricted by high cost and limited reach. These three factors both complement and construct each other. As a wave of technology sweeps in, artificial intelligence, explain reality, virtual reality, and the big data are challenging traditional education models with unemployment force. We're left wondering, can technology break through the inherent boundaries of education and achieve the perfect fusion of high quality, large scale, and personalized education?
Thank you so much. So, with this question in mind, with this impossible triangles and the explorations of human and AI collaborations in the future, let's look at today's agenda. So, our panel will feature two main segments. One is the keynote presentation, and two is a roundtable discussion. So, in the keynote presentation segments, we have four guests from academia, technologies, and industry who will share their cutting edge insights about educational technology. And also during the roundable discussion, we'll also continue to explore the futures of educational technology. We will cover contents from systematical reconstructions back to the fundamental missions of educations and learning. So these are the agenda, and we're looking forward to see the discussion.
Okay, now it's my honor to introduce our four distinguished guests. They are Professor Huang Ronghuai, Director of the Smart Learning Institute at the Beijing Normal University, and the Chair of the UNESCO Artificial Intelligence and Education Chair. Professor Chris Didi, Professor and Senior Researcher at the Harvard Graduate School of Education. Russ Gant, actor and AI researcher at MIT's Art, Culture, and Technology program. Claire Zhou, partner at GSV Venture Capital and head of AI investments. These four distinguished guests will bring us their latest research funding and practical case studies, ranging from global policy to cutting-edge connection from technological form to future educational environments.
Thank you so much. So now let's move into the keynote presentation and let's dive in. I can't wait. It's a great privilege to invite Professor Huang, and he's the director of the Smart Learning's Institute at Beijing Normal University and the chair of UNESCO. And he also can deliver his buildings about smart education environments and research in educational technology policies. So Professor Huang has been a leader in digitalized education in China with extensive experience in building smart education environments. And he also is a member of the New Generation Artificial Intelligence Expert Group and the Ministry of the Education, Digitalization, and Advisory Committees. So interestingly, given our topic is about educational technology, Professor Huang decided to deliver his speech through a very innovative platform, through his avatar. And Professor Huang, you can share your avatar presentation right now.
Yep.
So you can share your slides.
Yeah.
It's my first time watching.
Session Chair, Professor Chris Didi, and all my colleagues and friends, it's my pleasure to join today's event, Harvard's China Education Symposium. I'm especially happy to see Professor Didi here. It's been quite a while since I last visited Harvard, and I hope we'll have a chance to catch up soon, either here or back in Beijing, where you are always warmly welcome. I truly appreciate today's themes, which remind us that educational technology is far more than a tool. It is a key force reshaping how we learn. It is very glad for me to engage with students and participants. Regarding impossible triangle of high quality, large scale, and personalization, I'd like to say some words on empowering learning by digital and intelligent technologies with inclusiveness. This means using artificial intelligence to transform learning while ensuring that no student is left behind as we move into an AI-powered future. First of all, I'd like to remind all of you the three major concerns in today's learning and education. The first is the global learning crisis. According to the World Bank, nearly 2/3 of primary school children in developing and undeveloped countries cannot read and understand a simple text. This crisis has been further deepened by the COVID-19 pandemic. Today, an estimated 251 million children are failing to acquire even basic literacy skills, a reality that reflects the urgency of the global learning crisis. This crisis shows that we are still far from achieving the Education Agenda 2030. That goal is that by 2030, ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. The second concern is social skills. We must pay more attention to student well-being and social and emotional skills in the intelligent era. The Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD, identifies 5 key skills of young students by social and emotional learning: task performance, emotional regulation, engaging with others, open-mindedness, and collaboration. Their report reminds us that if students have higher social and emotional skills, they will perform in schools with creativity, persistence, trust, optimism, and achievement motivation. The third concern is the artificial intelligence dilemma. As all of us expected, artificial intelligence could greatly enhance learning in many ways. It also raises critical challenges in ethics, safety, privacy, and even potential cognitive decline. Eventually, the academic research worldwide in past decades shows that different technologies should be adapted to students' age groups or educational stages in order to meet their developmental needs at each stage of learning. For example, in early and primary education, the digital technologies really work for students, such as mobile apps and game-based learning help the kids to build basic skills like reading, counting, and thinking. In secondary education, AI systems could benefit for students like adaptive feedback, automated assessments, and intelligent tutoring systems to personalize learning and keep students engaged. In higher education, the AI-powered learning experiences will be truly meaningful for students. AI-enhanced open educational resources and collaborative platforms will promote students' critical thinking, problem-solving ability, and peer learning. Secondly, we found three global consensuses on learning and education. The first is active learning. As we all know, active and flexible learning played an essential role during school closures. Do you remember that bad time and situation in April 2020 during the global school closures? More than 1.5 billion learners, nearly 90% of all students worldwide, were affected, with over 180 countries shutting down schools entirely. Almost all students and schools had to shift to open, online, and distance learning, so active learning was becoming a key strategy to ensure learning continuity. I still remember in 2020, our team worked with UNESCO to develop the Handbook on Facilitating Flexible Learning During Educational Disruption. This handbook summarizes China's experience into 7 core elements, 15 practical stories, and 7 actionable recommendations. This handbook has been translated to many local languages and been used by more than 100 counties and regions. The second consensus is the science of learning. As you know, the science of learning is a multidisciplinary field that explores how humans learn, combining insights from neuroscience, psychology, and education. UNESCO recognizes its importance to bridge academic research to practice and the value to advance progress toward SDG 4. So in the last 2 years, UNESCO launched the Global Alliance on the Science of Learning for Education. My team has been proud to serve as a co-founder and active participant in this alliance. We continue to work on bridging research and practice through international collaboration, equipping educators with actionable strategies and promoting instructional approaches that support both cognitive development and emotional growth, ensuring all students benefit from active and personalized learning experiences. The third consensus is the new competences. In response to the rapid development of artificial intelligence, many frameworks have been proposed to define the essential competences and literacies that students need in the intelligent era. As I shared in my essay in IAU Horizons, I proposed 5 vital competences for digital citizens. Active learning during lifetime creativity in using AI, adaptability of flexible employment, resilience to uncertain circumstances, survival in rich AI environments. For example, the second competence emphasizes applying knowledge and experience to solve real-world problems creatively and unlocking students' potential for innovation. The fourth one involves making wise decisions in complex environments with a strong awareness of technological ethics, privacy, and social responsibility. Looking ahead, we see the expected changes coming to education for the future. In my book, Future Education Empowered by Artificial Intelligence, I describe how we are entering a new era of transformation. There are 4 radical education changes we can expect. New knowledge horizons, where knowledge is no longer created by experts alone. New learning landscapes, as learning becomes deeply embedded in digital environments. New curriculum patterns, with curriculum becoming integrated across disciplines. New teaching paradigms, where instruction is increasingly assisted by intelligent systems. Lastly, as we all expect, personalized learning is the ultimate goal of future education. Although there are many research, strategies, and solutions on this topic, I'd like to remind 4 elements: student agency, differentiated instruction, flexible learning pathways, and adaptive technologies. Student agency is about giving learners ownership and voice in their own learning process. Differentiated instruction means tailoring content and teaching strategies to fit individual strengths and needs. Flexible learning pathways allow students to progress at their own pace through varied content and formats. Adaptive technologies provide real-time feedback, helping adjust instruction based on each student's behavior and performance. Before I close, let me briefly share who we are. At the Smart Learning Institute of Beijing Normal University, and as the UNESCO Chair on AI in Education, our mission is to advance smart learning, improving education through innovative environments, digital tools, and AI-powered pedagogy. We're involved in international research, policy dialogue, capacity building, and global partnerships. We warmly welcome global students, researchers, and colleagues to connect with us and explore future collaboration. Let us work together toward future education. Thank you for your attention, and I look forward to further exchange and collaboration.
Okay, thank you, Professor Huang. That was very insightful. And I'm really impressed of the explosion of how education technology has moved from platform to ecosystem and from tools to reconstruction. Next, we are honored to introduce Professor Christie. He's a leader in the field of education technology and learning sciences, developing new type and educational system to meet the opportunities and the challenges of the 21st century. Please welcome Chris.
Thank you so much, Chris.
Thank you so much for inviting me to share ideas. And for my keynote, I want to talk about higher education in particular. And I mean not just higher education, but also learning after a higher education in the workplace and lifelong learning. A little background about my work with AI. Over half a century ago, when I was a graduate student, I read the very first scholarly article on AI in education in 1970. And the author of that article confidently predicted that we would not need teachers by the end of the 1970s. Well, obviously that prediction was wrong, and I've lived through 9 hype cycles of AI since then. About every 5 years, AI makes enough progress that the optimists declare that we have digital deities, and the pessimists say that the Terminator is coming for us. And all those extreme positions have been wrong in the past, and they're wrong in the present as well. So I bring a balanced perspective to this and a historic perspective. So the most important thing I'm going to say is that in learning, the destination is the journey. So we ask students to produce something, an essay, a symphony, a marketing plan, some kind of a proxy for their knowledge. And students and faculty typically focus on the proxy. But it's important to remember that what actually matters is the journey to be able to create that proxy. So I hear people, for example, saying, well, students don't really need to learn to write anymore because AI is going to do the writing. They just need prompt engineering and, a little bit of knowledge about how AI composes text, and then AI will do the writing for them. Well, AI may be able to produce the destination, but it isn't taking the journey. And in fact, when you learn to write, you learn to take your own original creative thoughts, organize them, express them in ways that are compelling and interesting for other people, and make a difference in the world. But when AI does the writing, and you simply are editing whatever AI has written, it's not your ideas, it's not your creativity. So one fundamental idea about AI in any form of education, when it comes to learning, you don't want anyone or anything to do your thinking for you. So in that spirit, I want to talk about one of the 7 tools that the National AI Institute for Adult Learning and Online Education has produced. I'm the Associate Director for Research for that institute. We're in our 4th year. And an example of such a tool is called SMART. SMART doesn't produce an artifact for students. It doesn't write an essay for them. It doesn't write a talk for them. But when learners produce an essay or a talk to express their understanding of a complex concept, SMART can give them feedback on that. Now, I'm old enough that I was pre-digital when I began teaching, and so I had to correct the spelling and the grammar in my students' papers rather than having the digital spelling and grammar checker do that for me. SMART is a similar step along the path towards helping people with assessment, because SMART can do the basic parts of understanding what students have turned in. If it's a 6-dimensional concept, SMART might say you've only got 4 of the 6 dimensions. If it's the interaction between concept 2 and concept 4 is important, SMART might provide you with that feedback. And then the human being can go on to do things that go beyond what the feedback that SMART is able to provide. So that's an example of a good use of AI. And it's an example of what I spend time thinking about called IA, not AI, but IA, intelligence augmentation. In intelligence augmentation, a human being and an AI work together with each doing what they do well, and the whole is more than the sum of the parts. What AI can do well is calculative prediction. For example, with cancer patients, an AI partner for the physician can look all across the world at online records of different kinds and provide up-to-the-minute evaluations of what's known about the treatment. But you would never want the AI working with the patient, because the doctor understands through judgment and practical wisdom that some people want quality of life and others quantity, that there's such a thing as pain, that there are personal and cultural beliefs about death, family circumstances, spiritual beliefs, and so on. So IA only works if each side does what it does well. Now, this National AI Institute that I'm part of, that is building the tools, uses AI for teachers of adults, adult learners, and then at the back end, it uses machine learning to provide rich sources of feedback that go back into the tools and go back into the learners themselves. So this is an example of the kind of data infrastructure that's needed in order to take advantage of AI fully, not just the tool, but having the back end in terms of machine learning. And if I think about IA for myself as a teacher of adults, I will soon be surrounded with all these AI agents, content tutors, question answering teaching assistants, lab assistants, library assistants, assessment assistants, even social assistants that can help students find learning partners. And I can either be de-skilled by these if I don't change anything that I'm doing, or I can upskill. And by changing what I'm doing, I can go deeper with students into personalization, as Professor Huang talked about, into understanding their culture better and how to help them learn within that culture. So IA only works if human beings upskill and emphasize judgment. But unfortunately, what our education systems now are emphasizing is reckoning. They're emphasizing what AI does well. And so we're training people to lose to AI because we're emphasizing high-stakes summative tests, which are all reckoning, rather than emphasizing the more complex ways of measuring judgment. And SMART would be an example of a more complex way of helping to do that. So I see a bright future for AI, but I also see that most of what people are doing now is using AI as a kind of digital duct tape to hold together an obsolete industrial era education system. So people say, oh, this can help me write quizzes. This can help me do lesson plans. This can help me give lectures. This can help me create podcasts. And those are useful things to do, but they're doing things better rather than doing better things. And I think our challenge with AI is to go beyond automation to innovation, doing better things, helping human beings to become the creative force. So I'll close with a metaphor that goes all the way back to ancient Greece. The maiden goddess of wisdom, Athena, always is portrayed as having an owl on her shoulder. The owl is like an animal sidekick that helps Athena be wise. And that's a metaphor for what AI might be for us, a kind of a sidekick, a partner. But Athena doesn't sit on the owl's shoulder. And we don't want AI to determine primarily who we are and what we do. Rather, we want AI to be helpful as a partner, a subordinate, doing the reckoning, leaving us to do the judgment. If these ideas have been of interest to you, I have a website that's easy to access. It's a repository with lots and lots of ideas on it. And I look forward to interacting with you about those ideas in the panel.
Thank you so much, Chris. That was so insightful. I learned a lot. Thank you. I really appreciate your ideas about like upscaling the systems as well as the individuals, and also emphasize on particular systems of judgment and recognize like what can AI does, what cannot. I know that currently we have a lot of product designers and large language models, engineers who is concentrating and thinking and reflecting of like what kind of future era should we go to. So it's a very important lesson for us to remember what can humans do and what can AI do, and then how to distinguish our uniqueness from artificial intelligence. And I think that culture is a very important key that connects humans together. All right. Thank you so much. And also, Claire, I apologize. I make the order wrong. So, do you want to share your insight? I know that you have a lot of like connections. Your ideas have a lot of connection with Chris' ideas. So we're really passionate to listen to your like follow-up keynote. Thank you so much.
My presentation is on my monitor, so if I'm looking that way, that's where it is. But thank you all
Yep.
for.
Thank you. I'll just briefly introduce you, and once you have the screen set up.
Yes. You all see the presentation?
No, I can see your screen. The website screen. Yep. And yeah, so when we're doing this, I'm very honored to invite Claire to our panel discussions and our panel keynotes. She's been actively involved in the GSV Ventures and ASU and GSV Education Technology Summit, and she's focusing on AI-driven learning products as well as future ecosystem buildings. Claire has played a key roles in launching impactful ed tech solutions through early stage investments and different kind of investments and project incubation. So welcome, Claire.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. I have a lot of slides, so we're going to run through these rapid fire, and hopefully I can give you a little bit of a preview into the very commercial side of the ed tech and AI world in just 10 minutes. So here are a couple of the themes I'd love to cover if we have enough time, but largely where the funding is going, how, we had that DeepSeek moment a couple months ago, big use cases that we're seeing in the AI and education world, how to navigate that ecosystem, how startups are navigating all of that. And then on the flip side, for consumers, where we're seeing adoption and implementation and where we might be heading. If you'd like to keep up with some of the work that I do in this space, I also write a weekly newsletter updating the ecosystem on all things AI and education specifically. But to kick off, where is the funding going? Obviously, AI is very hot right now, so we are seeing unprecedented funding specifically into AI companies. And a lot of that is largely in infrastructure, meaning the data centers, big LLM providers, AI labs. So not necessarily as much on the application layer, but the majority of big checks are being written on to drive and build the kind of highways as opposed to the cars themselves. For us as investors in the application layer, we're more interested in identifying the vehicles that ride and drive on top of this infrastructure. At the same time, AI investment is going beyond what any single company or government can finance. That's why you're seeing kind of this nuclear renaissance. It's also why you're seeing massive investments like Stargate into just the data center build out to support this AI infra. At the same time, you're also seeing players drop out of this AI arms race because you have players like Character AI or Inflection that have been gobbled up by the big players because at a certain point it is too hard to keep up in investing in these big AI models. And we'll talk about why that dynamic might be flipped on its head with the DeepSeek moment, but that's kind of how it's been playing out in the last few months. But because of that, I think there is a massive golden opportunity on the application layer because you have the OpenAIs and the Anthropics of the world investing heavily into building out these big brains and the foundation models. As an application layer builder, it has never been a better time to build and leverage that investment. And at the same time, AI is becoming much more affordable. If you look at the token cost, this is a little bit outdated, but the cost of GPT-4 quality results has declined by more than 99% in the last 2 years. So generally across the board, we kind of believe that, before maybe a couple months ago, you would have had questions around cost structure of building with AI. That's increasingly less and less of a problem. And we believe that AI is going to be pervasive in, every part of applications, whether or not they're an AI company or not. And this is kind of reinforced by the big DeepSeek moment that we saw back in February. I'm sure many of you had kept up with some of this news, but it was kind of a big reckoning moment for these big AI labs. The reason being that the prevailing belief in and why all these big AI labs got funding, like OpenAI, Anthropic, and their massive valuations, was because they believed in traditional scaling laws. This idea that in order for us to get new breakthroughs in the AI world, we had to invest in more data and more compute. The only way we could get better is just bigger and better. But DeepSeek kind of flipped that on its head because they essentially were able to output relatively similar results at 90% cheaper and train it nearly twice as fast. And it was open source. So 2 months and about $6 million for, again, the training run itself, and using 800 chips, which weren't necessarily state of the art. So this was important because it basically demonstrated that scaling at all costs might not necessarily be best, but it also completely flipped the dynamics around the economics of building with AI. I think the DeepSeek moment was big because it essentially showed that a lot of people have referenced this Jevons paradox. When the cost of electricity went down, you didn't see less usage. What you saw was that because of that unit of that commodity was so much cheaper, it was now embedded in everything. And I think you're going to see that play out with AI as well. I won't go into this for the sake of time, but happy to talk through it. And I have a piece on it as well. But in terms of applications in the AI education space, flipping to the use case layer, we're seeing a lot of teacher co-pilots. We're investors in a company called Magic School AI. They just raised another round, but there's companies like School AI, Brisk Teaching. This takes the idea that you can really use AI to automate a lot of the administrative functions of a teacher's role so that you can free up time and cognitive load so that they can focus on what they're doing best, which is teaching and connecting with students. A lot of AI tutors, I can go down a whole other spiel about my current thoughts on why we haven't necessarily delivered on the vision of AI tutors. A lot of research co-pilots for you and those of you in academia, those, being able to essentially build out like a AI assistant. And then a lot of interesting literacy plays. A lot of these, I think, some of the companies we've seen pitched to us have stayed a little bit superficial in that their personalization has really been, Claire likes dogs, so I'm going to give her a dog-related story, but reach the same vocab and same vocab goals. But at the same time, I think, we saw a whole wave of those, but now we're actually seeing a lot of companies that actually have learning science and pedagogy baked into this, and really blending AI and that ability to personalize with a literacy product. A lot around career navigation, this idea that now if you have an AI system that is able to process your resume, process your LinkedIn, but then also connect you with all the education to employment pipeline and opportunities, help you navigate that world. Language learning, a 24/7 forever accessible partner. I think the fact that AI isn't able to judge you, it's available 24/7. You can speak with it when you're on the subway. This really moves from traditional Rosetta Stone type textbooks to a conversational partner where you can actually achieve that last mile of language fluency. Knowledge management, a lot, Glean is one that raised another pretty sizable round and is big in the AI space. but this idea that you can now build a second brain for your company. You can use natural language to just say, hey, where is this compliance doc? And you don't have to go through click, or go reach out to the compliance team just for them to direct you to another source. You can just use natural language and it will direct you into that entire company's second brain. And then I have thoughts on this as well, but assessment, I think, is completely going to hopefully be flipped on its head, so that we're less so teaching to the test, as Chris also mentioned. So obviously a lot of companies are building in this space, as you just saw in a few of the examples that I laid out, the types of companies that have been coming across our tables. But what does it mean to actually build in this space? Clearly, for a lot of the big AI labs, education is a really important sector as well. 2024 was really the kind of, with 2022 and 23 really being focused on like consumer, and getting in front of the consumer use case. It felt like 2024 was when there was a big focus on education. So OpenAI hired the former CRO of Coursera to lead their education practice. Anthropic just built out their education team. Perplexity has a campus strategist program. All of these big AI labs realize how much learning, exploring, information retrieval is happening on their platforms, but also they want to get in front of students so that they can capture them when they're doing all this knowledge work before they convert into the workforce. So that's why there is a particular focus on higher education. But for us, as we evaluate AI in education companies, the fundamentals still apply. If you're building, data and distribution matters, and that's maybe where some of the big players have a distinct advantage. The more data you have and distribution, the better your product can be. And so I would just say, if you're a new player and just entering the space, thinking about that, and where maybe the legacy providers have a lot of data and distribution advantage. Another thing that we saw early on was just a lot of companies building tools and features. And yes, very exciting that now the barriers to building are so low. Vibe coding, as I'm sure some of you have played around with, Lovable or Cursor or Replit, is really exciting. But at the same time, there is a difference between building a tool versus a platform. So how do you build stickiness and actual real user experience, as opposed to a one-off workflow and automation of one specific workflow? And then I would just say, so much of the power of AI is not necessarily in the tech itself, but rather in what you do around the tech. So the product layer. Are you actually, so I think maybe for the AI tutor example, just because you have the most advanced model, it doesn't mean it's going to be delivering a learning experience in a pedagogical way or delivering it remotely similar to how a human would teach. So that all of that comes in the product and UX and user experience and UI. So AI funding remains unabated. You're seeing very large rounds. Fei Li, for example, raising $230 million for her world model startup. Both Ilya Sutskever and Mira Murati, who are big ex-OpenAI names, have also raised pretty large rounds with no product. So there's still a lot of excitement for space. And I know I only have 1 minute, but I'll just quickly go through the flip side of how we're seeing all this consumed. One is just that I think I got this question a couple of weeks ago, but someone asked me, oh, will we know whether or not something is an AI product or not? Shouldn't we have guardrails around that? And maybe, but I was at CES a couple months ago, and AI is just part of everything now. If you go to the Samsung exhibit, they don't have an AI powered section within their exhibition. It's just AI embedded into fridges, AI embedded into your computer, AI embedded into your smartwatches, your wearables, and whatnot. And you're also seeing this by consumers really driving the usage of this. I believe that number is now 500 million weekly active ChatGPT users. But again, I think in schools and institutions, there is a very clear lack of boundaries. Students are using it much more than their counterparts, teachers and instructors. And I think that's also leading to situations where, their students are using it and then it's being classified as cheating. So I think there's just a lot of that. There's a lot more work that needs to be done, at least on the institutional level. I think at the same time, 1 in 2 students do not feel AI ready is another thing worth noting. I mean, again, this is for higher ed, but just, that stark difference in that students are, over half of students are using it, and then 85% of instructors have not used any generative AI tools in their classes. And I think this moves upstream into corporations as well. You have Klarna that has leveraged AI agents to drive $40 million in profit. And I think what's important to note is that this is not just restricted to white collar work. It is also coming for our physical world as well. So, AI is becoming pervasive. It is like air. And I'm excited to dive deeper into this in the panel as well. Hopefully that was a helpful primer on how we're seeing the space.
Thank you so much. That was amazing. I feel like I learned so many products and I can't wait to use them. Thank you so much, Claire. It was a very unique angle, and then to reinforce people to dive into the educational field, especially given upon the successful launching products. So, Zhichao, do you want to continue?
Yeah, very thanks, Mr. Claire, for your remarkable speech. The pragmatic view of AI in education and its potential reshapes the global education landscape, and has provided us a more detailed understanding of the truth. Yes, thank you. And next, we are honored to invite Raskant, an AI researchers at MIT and a globally recognized XR architect to deliver the keynote speech. So please welcome Raskant.
Thank you so much, Ross.
Yep. So I need to share my screen with you here and bring up, and we are going to go into, right. Okay, so.
Yeah, it's great. Looks great. Can you click the present?
Yeah, sorry, I'm not, oh, here we go. Okay.
And you can click play from start at the left top corner.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, look great.
Yeah, thank you for having me. As said, I'm at MIT these days, but for the last 14, 15 years, I was down the river at Harvard where Chris is teaching. And in that time, I've really been focusing on another aspect of this, which is the technology itself and putting it into practice on a daily basis. And that really involves sort of creating a test bed classroom of the future, where we could try applying these new media technologies into actual courses, not teaching about the technology, but using a standard course and trying to bring it into a space where you could use the new technologies to see how it affected the teaching that you had been doing previously. And the areas that I've been working on are primarily XR and AI. And probably it was 10 years we were barely still looking at XR and a wide range of these extended reality opportunities like virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality. But then in the last 3 or 4 years, I've really been sort of shifting over to look at AI and how does AI change the classroom, the physical space. We talked a little bit about how it will change pedagogy and teaching, how it may have an effect on students, and how all of that is going into the economy. But I've really been looking at what does a classroom that has highly integrated XR technology and AI going to look like? What are learning spaces? What are teaching spaces going to look like? They don't look like what classrooms look like now, I can tell you that. We're still exploring what they're going to be, but there's going to have to be not only changes in the way that we teach, but the way that the spaces themselves that support teaching, the classrooms themselves, they're probably even more out of date than some of the pedagogical approaches, basically unchanged for a couple thousand years when you put 12, 2 dozen students in a room facing a wall with someone standing up in front of them. So really looking at how immersive projection, how various kind of extended reality technologies, when you integrate them together, what kind of learning spaces emerge? And they really are beginning to look quite different from what we see now. And this has to be taken into account when we begin to plan ahead. Harvard has something like 3,000 classrooms. You can't change them all overnight. You have to prioritize which ones can change sooner than others and what is involved with that change. It's not just technological, not just having projectors in the room or having an AI hotspot in the room, but lighting, sound, seating. Are you standing? Are you seated? These are all issues that are going to change greatly when you can take the information out of the teacher, the professor, and supplement it with information from the AI, going deeper into the research world, but bring them in real time into the classroom for the students. What's that going to look like? So we're really looking at how we can do that. A lot of these are ideas that are still in play right now. And what I'm doing at MIT is really looking at this next generation space, teaching and learning space, and how and which technologies will fit into that. Some of them will be things we've been using for 10 years. Immersive learning, we know, is a real boost to learning. We know it has capabilities which are really interesting. It really improves the effectiveness of learning to a great extent, but it's difficult to do. It's expensive to do. Content creation is really one of the big issues here. We know that if we have great content, we can put it into immersive, say, headsets. It really resonates with the students, particularly the Gen Z students. This is second nature to them in a lot of ways. When I talk about these, I'm really talking about a whole range of technologies from virtual reality, augmented, mixed, heightened, extended, and also immersive projection, which is really important. And as have been laid out previously, these things are going to apply in different areas. So immersive learning is really good at laboratory simulations, hands-on types of training, deep diving into data. But it's somewhat different between what you do in the classroom or the lecture hall and what is being done at home or in study areas. And we really need to look at that because we're going to see students that are going to be given tools that we could only imagine just a few years ago, where you can interact with something other than a fairly old-fashioned square box sitting on a desk with a keyboard. This will not support the kind of creativity, the type of development that we can really use with these new media technologies. Students want to be immersed in the data. They want to see it. They want to manipulate it. They don't necessarily want to be presented with a done deal. They want to understand how to get there themselves, how to take their knowledge. And one of these is to make sure we bridge the gap between the old tech and the new tech. So, for example, books are not going away, libraries aren't going, but they can be re-energized. We can connect books to the XR world directly so that when you open a book and read it now, you can see things that you couldn't see in the original book, for example. So why is all this important in higher education? Because this really is the next step. This is the next window as to how we can make some fundamental changes in really a broken system. Top to bottom, as is indicated from K-12 up through higher ed, we have lots and lots of problems which are historic in nature, and we haven't been very good at changing them and fixing them. Now, the technology won't fix it itself, but as has been outlined before me, personalized learning, the administrative side of teaching, which is always a drain on teachers, these can be speeded up and be more facile in a lot of ways, allowing time for the teacher to be in the space and to actually be interacting in real time, not just simply going through a litany of readings and explanations. So here we see what happens when you have more screens that are not on desks. We have students moving around physically. They're in the physical spaces. They're able to interact with real objects that are connected to the virtual world. And this is a very powerful combination. It turns out that AI plus XR is a more than 1 + 1 is 2. It's more like 1 + 1 is 10. It's a multiplier effect. When you can bring this extra knowledge information into these deep, rich, immersive environments, it gets even better and better. Now, one of the problems that hasn't been mentioned here about the value of being able to reach deeply into the deep learning area is the ability to give you accurate data, up to date, and data which has been, sort of corroborated and approved for what you want, either in the local classroom level, the department level, or the university level. And this is where RAGs come in, this idea of creating buckets of knowledge which only contain curated information. They're not pulled from a big general language model, but they're small language models which draw on real data. If you're teaching genetics, or if you're teaching art, if you're teaching science, you want the data that's relevant to your department, your institution, and your class. And you don't want to have to sort through that from the rest of the world. It also opens up a range of student interactivity with data, particularly big data, which they've never been able to get to directly. They've always had that filtered through the research level, but you can now bring the active research into the classroom and say, let's spread the data out, let's look at it, let's talk about it, let's see what we can do with it. And certainly generative AI imaging is one of the leaders in this. It was sort of one of the last ones to come online. It's literally changing week by week, month by month. The ability to take text and spoken data, because it's multimodal, you can talk to these systems and have them generate the type of media that used to take weeks and months and lots of money to create. You can now do that in essentially real time. So we can create immersive 360-degree experiences that used to take a year to create, but you consumed it in 1 hour. And you could not reuse it more than over a short period of time. Now we can get to the idea of generating real-time content using the AI as a backup and as a means to get to information, but then using the XR, the ability to bring those images into a teaching environment, which is multimodal, it's immersive, and it's changeable based on how the teacher and the students interact in real time. So we're really at the threshold of something, but in order to get there, as has been talked about before, we have a number of things we have to fix. I would really focus heavily on the classroom. The classroom is a real thing which is holding us back. We need more technology in the classroom that works every day, all the time, with very little uptake on learning as to how to use it. You basically talk to the room the way that they do in Star Trek. Tell me this, show me this. And it becomes the best teaching assistant ever. It's not teaching the class, but it's helping you pull data and information and putting it in front of the class in real time. So it's a very exciting time. I think we're on the verge of something that's really amazing, but we got to push some old ideas out of the way, into the background, about not only how we teach, but where we teach, and what does it look like where we teach. This is something I think we need to spend more time with. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was amazing. Thank you so much, Ross. It was very impressive, and I do really relate as a student myself that I'm looking so much forward to learn in these classrooms, and I think that I'll totally ask my parents to pay when I was in the primary school. I think the future era would also adapt this, but there's a lot of like emerging technology in this area, and people are just figuring out which one should we go for it. So I think it's a very critical time, especially in this 21st century, to let us experience and just use like hands-on experience to provide actual feedback. And then also I remember that everyone are saying that the importance of data, and I really like agree about this field, because data really is the foundations of each models and then the product itself. So thank you so much again. It was very insightful. I can also see from the audience side that we have a lot of audience online from different streams, and they're providing a lot of feedback. So I'll also upload the videos, the questions that they have after the panel discussion. So great. Thank you so much. And let's dive into the next session about the panel discussion, which I'm very passionate about. And feel free to speak anything that you want. And so let's begin. And our first topic, it's about identifying the origin of educational transformations. So we know that the education systems has a lot of rules, including students, teachers, schools, platforms, or policy systems. And in this transformational sparked by education, I was also wondering, or like me and my colleagues from Harvard are also wondering, if we must begin by changing one rule unit, who should we start with? and also whose change is most likely to activate the systematic transformation of the entire system. So it's a very big question, but I believe through the lens of technology, there's a lot of ways that we can answer these questions. So I also love to invite our global audience to join on this thought process. You can share what you think on the comments or chat, and your answer should be who can change first. So let's start from Chris. Do you have any ideas that you want to share about?
Yes, one of the things I've developed is a framework for how we scale successful innovations in education, a 5-dimensional framework. And it's important because we have small scale examples of almost every innovation that we would like to use, but we don't have large scale examples of those small scale. That's where we fall off the cliff in terms of making progress. And the first stage of the 5-dimensional framework is called depth, and it's about understanding not only whether your innovation is effective, but why it's effective. So let's say that I have an innovation in which students learn math by working in small collaborative groups, doing project-based learning with the teacher mentoring. So how much of the fact that it works is due to the fact that it's active learning? How much because it's social learning? How much because the teacher is able to be a mentor? And this is important because scale is about adaptation rather than duplication. When you want to go to a new context, you have to look at what that context has available. And when you modify the innovation, you don't want to take out the engine. It's fine to remove the hood ornament, but you don't want to take out the engine. And so understanding why it works is really important. So that would suggest that the first stage in a scalable innovation should always be looking at whether it works and why it works from the perspective of the group that it's designed for. So if it's a professional development innovation, you start with teachers. If it's a student innovation, you start with learners, and so on.
That was so insightful. Thank you so much. It's a very critical lens because we can dive into different layers and start from the small scales and then to bring the impact step by step. Thank you so much. So given this response, I wonder, does Dr. Huang has any perspective that you want to share? You can either share in Chinese or Mandarin or English.
Yeah, actually, I guess it should be case by case. I mean, in different countries have different condition and different pathways to this kind of things. Actually, I agree. Chris did talk about the scalable innovation. I mean, for transformation. So, if we in a school or in a university, the teacher will be the first to innovation to change the curriculum, change the course, and change everything. So that's a. But for primary school, for basic education, actually, the government will be very, very important. So. Maybe as you know, United Nations have a submission in 2022, and it's global transformation of this education. So actually, we needed to help the government to make the planning how to involve the digital technology, digital transformation, and even using AI to help the government to make the plan. That's very important. But for students, it's also very important because in different kind of students, in different university, different schools were quite different. So actually, some students maybe have a high digital literacy. So it's easy to use technology to be adaptive to the new normal, as the professor showed. But for other case, for example, in rural area, in some maybe not so community college, so the situation will be quite different. So I guess should be case by case. But nevertheless, the lead, school lead, and the government lead is very important to help to mobilize the resources to this kind of things. I guess that will be the key issue. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Huang. That was very insightful. And also thank you so much, Chris. I think that I can examine there's like a lot of tensions and a lot of innovative ideas. I'm also like doing a mental health startup about AI, and I'm looking for the person who is responsible of like launching the AI into the school systems. And it takes me a while to figure out who's the person who's in charge. Because when I was examining the students, the B2C customers, they don't really have the power to decide whether they can use the product. So I just dive into like different systems, different headmasters, and different like school organizer, and also school systems. And I know that understanding the system is very important. So I think it's very great opinion. Thank you so much, guys. And also, I wonder, does Roz and Claire has anything that you guys want to share about, given the questions?
I would just jump in and say, I agree with scalability. In terms of the classroom, bringing innovation into the classroom, scalability is everything. Not just the cost of the technology, but as I said, the cost of the content to go into the technology. You have to be able to scale that. You can't do one or two, you have to be hundreds and thousands. And that's really an interesting challenge. And I think a lot of it revolves around the students as a beginning point. In one of the XR classes that I'm teaching at MIT, for example, we have the students each week create the content for the next week's course, the next teaching materials. So in a sense, they're creating the course in real time as we go. And as things change, they change what they do. But they're going away with tools and coming back with new content to teach against. And the ideal is to do this in real time, to find a system where you can use all these technologies for the intelligence of the professor and the knowledge of how to teach that particular level of students. If you're talking about Gen Z, it's very different than millennial, it's different than a number of others. So you have to have the tools flexible enough of who you're talking to and to be able to scale those.
That was very insightful. I totally agree on this. Yes, Claire.
I would also just add, I think as we talk a lot about applying AI into education settings, it is honestly probably like 1 part the tech itself and 9 parts change management. And I think in that sense, it's cultural inertia. And then historically education has been relatively slow to adopt technologies. I think, at least for us, a lot of the applications we've seen have mostly come from enterprise first, and then it's moved downstream into higher ed and K-12. But at the same time, I totally understand that there's complexities in place, right? Student data privacy, especially at the K-12 levels, learning how to interact with AI. I think there are still a lot of unanswered questions around long-term impacts of AI companionship, which we've also seen students independently pursuing with Snapchat AI or character AI. So I also think just recognizing that there are a lot of the change will also have to come from a cultural standpoint, as opposed to just purely the tech drive, because the tech is going to move. And I think that is moving full speed ahead. It's going to be the change management piece.
Thank you so much. Yeah, exactly. I feel like given the AI era or any educations, the other industry are moving like rapidly, but education are often the one who's like slowly moving ahead, because there's a lot of complexities and a lot of like different roles in charge. So it's very important for us to reflect on this question. Thank you so much, Claire, and thank you so much for everyone. Let's dive into the next question about the round of roundtable discussions. And this topic is about the tech singularities, and which particularly about what will be the next breakthrough movement in educational technology. So I'm personally a fiction fan, and when I was reading a lot of books, I heard there's a term named technological singularities, which was proposed by a futurist called Ray Kurzweil. And he predicted that by the 2045, the technology singularities will occur when machines will have the ability to self-learn the concepts and also evolve, potentially suppressing humans' intelligence. I'm not really sure about this. And then, while that singularities may be like 20 years away, the signs are already accelerating. We can see there's a lot of large language models, there's AI agents, there's the particular different interactive products going on, there's robotics. And then, even though we're not exactly sure whether this will occur in this particular time or year, it will serve as a reference for us to reflect about the future learning looks like. So, given this context, Claire, I also want to continue to ask you what kind of like tech format or models do you believe will define the next global breakthrough in the learning? For example, it can be a specific products, models, or a system.
Yeah. Yeah. And on Ray Kurzweil, I guess even tying to your previous question, I think one of my favorite quotes of his is like the future is here. It's just unevenly distributed. And I do think that is very on point for how we might think about it, text diffusion in the education ecosystem as well. As it relates to, I think, the next global breakthrough, I think it's tough to pin down on one, but I would probably say I am excited about all the big shifts we're seeing in multimodality. I feel like if you just think about 3 or 4 years ago, so much of the tech was a heavy emphasis on our text data. ChatGPT was largely text focused, and in just a few short years, we've embedded image, video, audio very easily. And now most of these models that are coming out are inherently multimodal. So I think the future is very multimodal. I think if you look at our existing interactions with technology, they have largely remained in the form of unnatural human-computer interaction. So it's clicking, typing, scrolling. I think for the first time ever, we will be able to interact with these devices and computers in a way that we would speak with another human. And I think that's only going to be amplified by all the big pushes on the agentic front. Anthropic and OpenAI and Microsoft even just embedded computer use. So this idea that AI systems, for the first time ever, they're able to actually click and scroll and type for you. You just have to, you say, book me a flight, it will click, go through Expedia, it will confirm with you. So for the first time ever, these systems are able to navigate the web for you and also process multimodal data. I think it's exciting for a bunch of reasons. It means the ability to embed learning much more in the flow of work. So there's a company, for example, called Squint AI that Sequoia backed. They basically they're only focused on frontline workers in manufacturing environments. And because they now have camera systems and because AI systems can now process visual data, instead of the old way where we have frontline workers who have to go ask for a manager, where they have to go consult, a 50-page manual that is very hard to understand. In real time now, an AI assistive system that has all the visual inputs and knows exactly what your role is in the manufacturing line can give you advice on how to get past that one issue. So bringing AI teaching and assisting into the physical world is exciting, but I also think it's very highly applicable in K-12, right? Then that's why I have tensions and angst around current AI tutors, because they're still very much so wrappers on top of ChatGPT's UX. I think if you put a text box in front of a fourth grader, they're probably not going to know how to ask great questions or know how to talk to chatbots, right? And they learn very quickly. But I think if you really want to unlock the next level of learning, it's multimodal. It's being able to walk through an art museum and instantly click and show what you're seeing and ask them, why exactly is this, how can I learn from this? And so I would really just emphasize, I think, I think multimodality plus agents, and then how that all applies into the ed tech application layer.
Wow, thank you so much. Absolutely. Multimodal is a very important keyword. I just wonder, as a follow-up question, do you think the future will follow like a multi-agent communication? For example, like one main agent serving the whole education systems, or there's gonna be like diverse agents that serve different sample groups or different students from different backgrounds?
Yeah, I don't know if I can give a conclusive answer.
Yeah.
I mean, so this last week, ChatGPT just announced memory, and people just kind of saw it as a minor feature upgrade, which was great. But I think there was a lot of hidden unlocks in that. Once ChatGPT is embedding longitudinal memory of you, and before, when we used ChatGPT, it was I'm a vegetarian, I work at a startup. Remember that when you give me responses. Now it's collecting passive memory. So every time you're saying, I don't like that response, or every time you're saying, make it this style or make it more Gen Z, it's passively remembering that in that knowledge graph and memory of you. I think in that sense, there is a world where I wonder if we are really moving towards this very agentic way of operating with the world. Instead of me having an Expedia travel agent and a learning agent and a home management agent, maybe that's the play that OpenAI wants, is to be the passport as you navigate through the ecosystem, because they have so much memory on you as a user profile, your clicks, what you're looking at, the information you're adjusting. So I don't know, this is all speculative, but as someone or in my role as someone who has to predict how technologies will evolve in 5-10 years, that's kind of one prediction I've been sitting on.
Great. That's fabulous. Thank you so much. So Ross, given that context, I also wonder, what do you think? And also we have an add-on questions is about the immersive technology is increasingly replicate real world experience, as you mentioned. So our question also wants to know, what's your opinions about how should we redefine the role of teachers and also the classroom in this new context? You can also add on your perspective on the previous question as well.
Sure. Yeah, I think everything that Claire is saying is definitely true. And it's interesting. Can we separate out education from the rest of the world and the way it's being affected by AI? No, there's going to be no way to separate them. And we're going to have to essentially manage what the commercial world is doing, because, as she said, they're moving much faster. We have to select things that we can use now, that we can implement now, that we can afford to do now. One of those certainly is to use the XR tools in certain areas. Now, XR is not a solution unto itself. It's always going to be a niche solution because it's difficult to do, and it's going to be difficult to do for some time in terms of scalability. Doing all classes all the time with immersive, no. There are certain types of learning where immersive is particularly good, like language learning turns out to be an extremely important area for immersive. It's also very good. AI is very good at language handling. So when you combine AI with XR in the language world, you get a win-win situation. There's other situations where that doesn't necessarily play out. So I think that it's a question of applying the right tools, but then looking at where you place them first. You need to sort of follow the leader thing, where certain professors, certain departments, certain programs and courses need to step out of their comfort zone and try and bring these new technologies in. One, if not maybe the most important thing, is to pacify the students. The students have this on themselves personally, much of this technology. They own headsets, they own and have access to the AIs. And they're wondering, why does the institution not be better than they are? It used to be that you went to a high-end university in order to get access to tools. Now they have the tools in their backpack, and they're going to the university to seek knowledge, and they want to use their own tools to do this. So one of the things I'm seeing is that the integration of the new technologies may come just from the students. That is to say, reach into your backpack and pull out this. We're going to use this now. That in the end, I'm not sure that institutions can actually keep up with the rate of change on the technological front. But when it's been out there and commoditized, then all of a sudden it becomes usable, but you don't want to manage it at a large scale. So scalability keeps coming up and up in all of these things. AI really, as I said, kickstarts all of these other technologies. It gives you the ability to make each of those experiences faster, cheaper, better. The faster part is really important, real time. You can create content in real time that's high quality, pulled from real data, pulled from experience from not only yourself, but the department and the institution. So the technology is not the answer. It's a new set of tools that hopefully will give us an answer, but the institution themselves have to be changed and modified to accept those tools. And I think it's going to be the tool makers, the tool users who have to press from the bottom up because they understand it, they have it, they use it every day. The top down, it's not going to work. If you talk to the people who are running things, they actually aren't using it every day. They don't have that tool knowledge. So I think it's institutionally bringing the knowledge to the students. We tell them, here's a list of AI programs that might be useful. That night, they're using them. And the next day, they've done something with them. That can't happen within the institution at that kind of speed.
That's great. That's great. Thank you so much. I was marking it down. Scalability and also bottom-up institution is a very key term for this panel discussion. Thank you so much. Yes, I think that the systems, education systems, as well as the teacher really needs to do some hands-on products and hands-on implementations in the given era. And speaking about scalabilities, it leads us to the next questions about our main topic, which involves the impossible triangle in education. And these are the dilemma that everyone is facing through like the past centuries. And we know that in education, the pursuit of high quality, large scales, and personalization has long formed a structured intention and impossible triangles. It's very difficult to resolve. So our problems mainly focus on whether can educational technology truly break this tension and where is the most promising breakthrough points. So today, we want to dive into whether technology can break through the structural tension, whether it can bring about systematic change that allows the three goals to truly coexist. And first, we want to ask Chris about your perspective to break through the first triangle angle about personalization. So what do you think is the core value should next generation education products process in order to scale the values of personalization? You can talk about like product designs or intelligent decisions, anything. Thank you so much.
Thank you for asking. So I want to go back to something I talked about in my keynote with doing things better versus doing better things. And I'll give you an example from half a century ago when my university began to go digital and word processing came out, the very first word processing programs. And what my university did was immediately to identify the clerks and secretaries who could type the fastest and make them word processing specialists so that they had the word processors, they could do corrections faster because everything was digital. And that was their model for how to improve writing within the university. Now, what people figured out fairly quickly was doing a better thing, which is that everybody did their own writing. You didn't run everything through your secretary anymore because the machine was capable of rapidly doing revisions without your having to get out the correction tape or the whiteout or the other workarounds for paper. And that really led to vast improvements in writing because then instead of thinking for 2 minutes and trying to put down a sentence that was perfect, you think for 10 seconds, put down a sentence, think for another 5, modify it, think for another 5, modify it, and you have a much better sentence at the end of the 2 minutes because you're revising as writing. So move forward to today. Just as an example, digital teaching assistants. Doing things better is to say, oh, the digital teaching assistant now can answer a lot of questions, can free up the professor, intelligence augmentation. But doing better things, the bigger impact may be when these digital teaching assistants form a knowledge community, a digital knowledge community, and they do something that human teaching assistants don't have the time to do. They get together and talk about across classes. What do we know about this student? What emerges when you look across several classes instead of just individually within each? And across classes, what do we know that one professor is doing that might be helpful for a problem that another professor is having? That would be doing better things in a way that would be a kind of breakthrough. And I think that's where personalization may come from, is, as Professor Huang says, Personalization is about voice and choice. It's about individual passions. It's about student-centered learning. And to understand the student fully, this kind of cross-course sharing of knowledge about insights about the students and teaching becomes feasible now with AI.
Thank you so much. Yeah, scalable student-centered learning is a critical thing, and I really appreciate that we have to value the importance of students' personal values, especially their creativities, their critical thinkings. These are these main core that prioritize personalization in education. Right. So let's ask about Professor Huang. So in your view, where should the most critical leverage point for education lies during the scaling of equitable education? How can we avoid traps and scales increase, quality decrease, and instead enable meaningful coverage at a scale?
Yeah, actually, I like the question most. Actually, it's very, very important. Actually, as you know, my background is education technology. So I do believe technology can break the impossible triangle. Actually, for us, we can see some new progress in America, in China, in Europe, even in African countries. I guess maybe for example, for university, for the students to do research, even for the students to have a high academic ability. So the AI can help them to do, for example, to do design and the data analysis and to find the solutions. It's very, very powerful. In America, in China, we can see a lot of case studies, cases here there. For average people, actually, digital technology and the AI can help the people resources more accessible, affordable, available, and adaptable. So for every people have the opportunity to this kind of things. For some people with disabilities, special needs, actually more and more technology can be helping them to improve their ability to notice things. So I guess the new technology, even with the AI support, can help to break the triangle. That's my answer. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yes, you really values about AIs, and me as a student really recognize the tools of AI and the functionality. I really benefit a lot from it. It really encouraged me to reach out to a lot of resources that I can't personally reach out, and I don't need to pay anymore. So thank you so much again, Dr. Huang. Claire, I wonder in your opinions, how can technology truly drive a breakthrough through the high quality learning experience? And if there's like a system structure is transferable, designable, and scalable, what should allow immersive quality learning to enter the mainstream?
Yeah, I think to go back to maybe the AI tutor idea, I do think, I think there are so many ways you can deliver high quality learning experiences, and it's not just infusing AI. I think it's, again, how you use the technology and how the product you actually build. And so much of that is not based off of the tech itself. That being said, I do think one of the big things I've seen has just been a lot of people saying that they've built an AI tutor, and I think that they've delivered on that in a product version for people who are familiar with AI and know how to use ChatGPT. But I think one thing that they haven't gone a layer deeper into is sometimes realizing that, these models are inherently sycophantic. They're designed to please you. They often deliver walls of text. That's probably not the best way to engage younger students or even, older adult students, even me. And so how do you actually build a learning layer around this fundamental unit of intelligence? It's not just giving someone ChatGPT, it's actually building a learning experience around it. So I would probably just say that's an example of really the difference between, just something out of the box versus something that actually has learning science baked into it, has a product layer around it. I would also say probably it feels like right now a really important key in this moment is if you actually want to deliver on a great tutoring experience is the ability to assess where people are beyond multiple choice questions or quizzing people or just figuring out if they, memorize the answer. And we're seeing some interesting applications of that. So, we looked at a bunch of companies that are essentially have a ton of data on student handwriting and them working through math problems. And I think as a teacher, instead of getting Claire, an output that's Claire got 5 out of 10 questions right, you'd much rather get qualitative insights on Claire is very confident about this. She rushes through this part of the question. She often uses a negative sign, but then really quickly fixes it, or often confuses numerators and denominators. Those kind of insights that you can get from watching a student. And before, that was something that only a human teacher could do by standing and working alongside a child. Now you can actually do that at scale with AI. So we invested in a company called Ropes that's doing that for technical interviewing, as opposed to just saying, Claire got 8 out of 10 leak code problems correct. What they're now outputting is a scorecard that is much more similar to a human referring another candidate and saying, they spent this much time starting up, they're working on this problem. Here's what they seemed unsure about. This is why we recommend them for your role. So I think really I think the 2 key components is 1, remembering again the product element, but also 2, if you really want to deliver a personalized tutoring experience, you have to be able to, at a personalized level, measure where they are. And so I would probably emphasize those 2 things.
Thank you so much. Yeah, really, it was very insightful, especially given the assessments in this current education learning system. I was like comparing different AI products with the actual teacher, and I realized that, oh, maybe AI can have like a very personalized, data-driven assessment that targets every student and it can iterate every time. Thank you so much. So, Ross, given all these 3 triangles answered, and then after hearing about this perspective, do you feel that there is like a viable solutions for using new technologies to rebalance or reconstruct impossible triangles in educations? Or have you seen some examples in your field, either in practice or product development that attempts to push against this structure boundaries?
Currently, we don't have this ability. We can see it emerging. We can see that if you project forward that we will have this, and it will have it fairly quickly in the next couple of years. I think the earlier comment about multimodal is very important. We get the majority, maybe 90% of what we know through our eyes. It's what we see in the world. Somebody can tell you something, but it's better if they show you something. It's even better if they can take you there and immerse you in it. So the multimodal part, visual, audio, is going to play an increasing, I think, important role in this. And as we move into that world, it will need new products. There'll be new companies that now will look at the multimodal aspects. They won't be an add-on to what came before, but there'll be whole standalone new ways to think about problem solving and presenting information. When everybody in the room can be a filmmaker, everybody in the room can be a professional photographer, everybody in the room can create and write music, you need to then say, okay, how do we use those new capabilities in teaching or learning, whatever the subject was? Those are general tools, and you want to apply them to any number of different subjects. So I think what's happening in the multimodal world is very interesting right now. Also, there's some things about what we don't know. There's things we know, there's things we don't know, there's things we don't know. And then there's the unknowns, the things we don't know. And this is where I think it gets really interesting, because AI is in that space. The AI has developed such sophistication that it is capable of things which we don't even understand yet, but yet we're not really reaching into that space. We're trying to make it be like us, only, better, faster, and more flexible. But what it can do that we don't know it can do, I think is extremely interesting. I've been doing a lot of study with hallucinations. And why are they hallucinating? And is hallucinating a good thing or a bad thing? And it seems like it actually may be a good thing. which is to say that what we're seeing is a little window into this kind of new thinking. There's a new area that came out of Evans at University of Chicago and Max Planck Institute, where they're really thinking about AI as alien intelligence. That is to say, it's a separate thing from human intelligence, and it may end up being more, inclusive and have greater potential in it. So I think we have to change a lot of our thinking about this. And one of the ways they're doing it is through multimodal, through visualization. Draw me a picture that could never have been drawn by a human being, and it will do that for you. And I did this just the other night. And then I said, wow, that's an interesting picture. Explain why you did it. And then the AI gave me 3 pages back explaining exactly why this incredibly surrealistic image, why it created it. And none of the answers and none of the imagery would have ever been done by a human. And so there's this potential space out there that I think we also need to look at and realize we're early in the game. There's some big game changers coming, and a lot of it's going to be triggered by multimodality.
Wow, that's incredible. Thank you so much. It was very insightful, especially given the part that there is a thing that exists outside of our schema, and then it's very hard to predict what would the future looks like. It was very insightful. Thank you so much. So yeah, I think it's very hard to break the triangle, but we have to try and we have to use different research and iterations. And based on the questions, I also wonder, we have moved from question from like education system to like technology breakthroughs to structural dilemmas, and rounding back in a world increasingly shaped by AI, what kind of future learners should we prepare for in response to continuous evolutions of educational technology? I know it's getting like philosophical, but you guys can try through like different areas or different perspective. So
it's flexibility, which is in putting into everybody in the system, top to down, flexibility. We've come out of an era with very little flexibility, but we're going into an era which is going to demand ever increasing flexibility. How we think, what tools we use, where we go to learn, how we learn. It's going to be changing very, very rapidly. And it's going to be surfing the whitewater. You have to basically have some general ideas that let you choose, pick, and modify things that are coming at you constantly. And I think those learners are quite different. Gen Z is very interesting, I think. When you ask them certain questions, you realize this is not your previous student, nor is it in the millennials. I mean, this is really, they're prepared for this kind of uncertainty, this kind of flexibility, unlike their predecessors and the institutions they're going to and their teachers. They tend to all be much more stuck than the students are. So I constantly am going back to them and asking them, what do you want? What do you think the system should be like? How should this serve you better? It's almost like in the sort of customer relationship, you got to talk to the customer. In this case, they're going to talk back to you in a way that's really quite unexpected. In the same way, you've got to talk to the AI about what's unexpected. And the two of these, the unexpected learner and the unexpected AI, are converging very rapidly. So we're headed into some very interesting times, I think.
exactly, totally agree on this. There's a very multimodal, and there's a lot of humans or AIs that we need to communicate upon. So I wonder, Dr. Huang, do you have any perspective on this question?
Yeah, I guess maybe in future, if you think about the learners should be with digital mindset. Actually, we need to live in the digital world. That's another triangle, combine the physical world, social society, and the cyberspace. So it's another world. So we need to prepare for a digital citizen. That's the key goals. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, citizens, very important. Thank you. How about Chris? Do you have any thought on these questions?
In 2020, I co-edited a book about new models of lifelong learning in the digital age. And one of the things that we discussed was that we were entering an incredibly difficult series of decades failure to reach any of the UN sustainability goals, climate change, disruptive technologies, issues with globalization, and that we were going to need to prepare a whole generation to be able to cope with that very difficult time, to thrive on chaos, if you will. After the book was written, we had the pandemic, we had Gen AI, and now we have this shift in the global balance among countries. So we were certainly right about disruption, chaos, difficulty. And what I think this means for learners is not only the intellectual flexibility that Russ describes, but also a lot of beliefs and dispositions, beliefs in self-efficacy and innovativeness and growth mindset, beliefs that undercut stereotype threat and imposter syndrome, dispositions that emphasize resilience and tenacity and creativity. And those are not going to come from AI. Those are human characteristics that are going to come from IA, and the teacher being freed to focus on developing those kinds of attributes.
Thank you so much. Yes, I think IA is a very key components that we have to investigate in real life, and people need to reflect on this maybe every day. Thank you so much again. And then Claire, I want to hear your thought about this question.
Yeah, I know we are coming up on time, but I 100% agree with Russ on just generally this importance of adaptability and flexibility. I think the theme is there is a lot of uncertainty coming. I think realistically, as much as we want to frame that, AI is not going to displace certain jobs, I do think that at least that's what the biggest AI labs are building towards. So I think a world where how we think about employment, how we think about education is flipped on its head. I think, in a world where the half-life of skills is quickly declining, the most important thing is having that learning velocity and ability to adapt. I would also just say making sure that we really emphasize metacognition and our ability to learn how to learn. I think that's probably been a big topic is, okay, we've proven out that there are massive productivity gains from this technology, but what does this actually do to our collective ability to think for ourselves? And in a world where, yay, we all become managers of AI, how do you actually validate how well an AI's output is if you've never done the same work in order to know what is high quality work versus low quality work? How do you build people to have skills to build towards that? And I would also just emphasize, the human element of in an age where increasingly we are seeing challenges around loneliness and mental health. It feels like the most human skills that we should try to maintain is our ability to uniquely connect with other people, empathize with others. And so I would probably emphasize those three things: adaptability, critical thinking, and most human parts of our learners.
Thank you so much. Wonderful. Yeah, I was so looking forward to see the future era of how education would look like. And then maybe around 50 years later, we can see there is a very stable triangles that reach every corners of the triangles. People are having personalized, scalable, and then also high quality education. I think that's everyone's is trying and then working forward to achieve this. And I really think that's in this era, it's a very critical era for us to try out different tools and also iterate on different tools to see what are the critical key terms, key themes that we have to consider in the future era systems, given the education forms. Thank you so much again, everyone. And to wrap up, does Chao want to share the conclusion slides? Thank you. Thank you so much. We have a lot of audience positive feedback from across the globe. People are willing to connect. So I'm also very passionate and I learn a lot. So thank you again for all the guest speakers for today. And let's keep in touch. Thanks so much.
非常感谢教育科技分论坛的主创团队和嘉宾们带来的精彩分享。在这个特别的时刻，
I'd like to thank the co-host and the guest speakers. Now we are nearing the end of the 16th Harvard China Education Symposium. In Harvard, we have held youth scholar meetings and openings. We have talked about our research and we have built connections between people. We have also held an online workshop and many special activities. It has made this symposium richer. We talked about 6 core topics: life education, cross-cultural and multilingual education, art education, family education, future education, and education technology. Each panel brought in wisdoms from all over the world. Now, all panels of the 16th Harvard China Education Symposium has ended. I'd like to thank the audience for their support. Your participation made this dialogue possible and meaningful. I hope that we can light up each other and light up the future of education. I hope we can have further communications in the future. Thank you.